Welcome into a fresh edition of Daily Faceoff Live. It is Wednesday, January 21st, and we are streaming live on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. Looking for your inbox questions for later on, or if you have some Canucks questions, you can drop those in because Irf Gaffar from the fourth period is going to be our guest today. The show, as always, a presentation of Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. No Carter Hutton today. He is on his way to Edmonton right now to hang out with me and Jasper for the weekend. So that means I got Steve Peters riding shotgun with me. Petey, how's it going?
It's going really well as we start to get ready for this Olympic break. I think a lot of things are starting to fall in place in these playoff races. It's an exciting time in the NHL.
Yeah, there is a lot to get to, including a little bit of breaking news. So let's not waste any time. Let's jump right into it. Olympic injury watch. That is going to be a story that will continue to develop over the next couple of weeks here as we creep closer and closer to the Milan Games. And today, some news that Seth Jones is injured and will not be ready in time for the Olympics, and the replacement that Team USA names is Jackson Lacombe after last night and the game Lane Hutson had, and the Montreal Canadiens throwing a little shade on Twitter at the Minnesota Wild, who, by the way, their GM, Bill Guerin, the GM of Team USA. So it was not lost on anyone that Hutson had that performance last night against Billy G's team. But Petey, are you surprised that it's Lacombe that gets the call over Hutson with the injury?
You know, this is, you scratch your head, and when you go build a team like this, you're always looking for players that are going to fit in different spots. So when you're looking for a defenseman for Team USA, I think you got to look for a guy that can bring you something that nobody else can bring. And to me, that's Lane Hutson. I mean, I don't know if there's, you look at the numbers he's putting up this year from the back end. He just is so dynamic from the back end offensively that, hey, you know what? If it gets to be a tougher grind, then you limit his ice time. But if you need that goal, I don't know who you'd rather have on the ice right now than Lane Hutson. I'm totally surprised. Now you look at Lacombe and his ability. He's got a bigger, longer reach, and he can defend the rush maybe a little bit. And he can get the puck up the ice, and he does have an offensive upside. But he's not Lane Hutson. And so I am surprised when you have that next guy up mentality. Man, I think Lacombe came from nowhere and jumped up over Lane Hutson.
I see Mechanicsville in the chat says, I hope we bring up the phantom call on Hutson last night. I mean, there's not much more to add to it other than the fact it was ridiculous. But the highlight from last night was Lane Hutson and his 2 points. I guess the other name, PD, that pops into my head is, man, I thought Mike Sullivan and company would be like, all right, let's right the wrong here, put Adam Fox on the team.
Yeah, you know, Adam Fox is one of those guys too, and I think we talked about last time we talked about the American Olympic team is what Fox could bring, and I think you need to have people that have been through the fire before and been in situations like this before. This Olympics is going to be different. I mean, guys have been chomping at the bit to get at this, and I think the guys that have been there, the guys that are experienced, could make a difference. And I do think Adam Fox is a guy that can bring some leadership in that room. Experience, has been there. And again, you talk about a guy, you can plug him into the lineup when you need him, and he's got that offensive upside, and he's a very smart defensive, maybe not a physical defenseman defensively, but he's a smart defenseman that knows how to play in the right spots and use his size to his advantage and have a good stick. So I do think the last we talked to Johnny Lazarus, he was shocked that Adam Fox was not on this team. And again, another opportunity to maybe right the wrong. And so, yeah, I think it's Lane Hutson and Adam Fox. And for Lacombe to come out of nowhere, it's Billy Guerin and his staff see something that maybe I don't.
Yeah, and again, we're talking about a defenseman who, maybe doesn't even end up playing a game, which in a way almost makes it where, like, you should want that to be Lane Hutson, because if you need goals or you go through a couple of games and you're like, our offense is dried up, I think you'd rather point to a Fox or a Hutson versus Jackson Lacombe. And that's no disrespect to him. He's a fine young defenseman. He does move the puck well. He does things well. But man, that one is surprising for me. Like, Lacombe would have maybe been my third guess. Outside of Team USA, some other notes to pass along. Jonas Brodin for Team Sweden. He is out for the Olympics. I really wonder if they slide Mattias Ekholm into the mix there. He's really started to play some good hockey over the last 4 to 6 weeks here, and he was a guy who was on that Four Nations roster and was passed over with the initial Olympic roster. But the other name that Sweden's not going to have, they're expecting to be without Duck centerman Leo Carlsson, and that is just massive. It's a massive loss.
Yeah, I think when you look at these teams, you look at Sweden and Finland are trying to catch up to and compete against Team USA and Team Canada. I think they're next up, but they have to play perfectly, and they need all of their weapons and able to compete against the top teams in the world. And Leo Carlson, he's going to do everything right for that club. He's going to be the guy that drives their offense. He's going to be the big center ice presence for that team. And I do think this is one of those injuries that they're not Canada, they're not the US, that they can have that next man up mentality and they are deep enough to maybe field a squad and a half. That's not the case here. So I do think this is one of those blows that's going to be very devastating to Team Sweden.
Yeah, I think it's right up there. We were talking before the show. This is heaping high praise on Leo Carlson, but we both said it's right up there in terms of
Yeah.
like impact on the team with Barkov missing for Finland. Because when you looked at that center depth chart for Sweden, it was like, okay, if Carlson can be a driver who goes head to head against the other team's best players, then Eriksson X on your second line, okay. And then, Elias Pettersson can move to the third line, play a bit more of a sheltered role. You can pick and choose his spots. Mika Zibanejad's having a great year. That center depth chart looked great. And now that you don't have Carlson up at the top, you kind of start wincing and going, oh, God, do you need to trust Zibanejad up there? Is that something he can handle? Where does Pettersson go? Like, it really messes everything up. And on top of that, Petey, Pierre LeBrun tweeting, Sweden's hopeful, but they don't have answers on Hedman, Landeskog, Erik Karlsson, William Nylander, and Joel Eriksson Ek. Like, they could be
Wow.
decimated with injuries.
Yeah, and you talk about the middle of the ice, how important that's going to be in a tournament that's only a couple of weeks long. It's the team that can be the best down the middle of the ice, offensively and defensively. They're going to have a leg up in this tournament. And being without those players you just mentioned, man, not just up the middle, but in the back end, this is going to be tough. And it's so sad that we've been waiting as a bated breath as a fan base to see best on best for years and to have so many players, so many key players for all of these teams that are going to be out and potentially out for all of these teams is really sad for hockey fans.
Yeah, and I think we're starting to see maybe the effects of that condensed schedule that the Olympic year has brought us. One more note on the Olympic injury front, and then we'll move along. Pierre LeBrun also reporting Anthony Cirelli should play next game for the Lightning, so doesn't sound too serious for him. Darcy Kuemper sounds day-to-day, but they're going to do more tests today to make sure. Obviously, there's the Braden Point thing, too. Like, there are some forwards who could be question marks for Team Canada. If they can't go, again, Seth Jarvis is kind of the incumbent. He was on that Four Nations roster. Apparently, they've told him that he is one of the reserve players, but I really wonder, not to show my Oiler homer side again, nobody in the NHL has scored more goals than Zach Hyman since December 11th. I think that should carry some weight.
Yeah, we talk about what those fit are, right? Like Braden Point to me is one that's going to bring speed and his ability gets the net and he's going to have that offensive upside. But when you talk about having to add somebody to that roster, you need to have somebody that can do multiple things. And to me, Zach Hyman is one of those players. Can be physical. If you need to be physical, he can bring that little bit of an edge along the wall. He can get to the front of the net on the power play. He can help distribute the puck. I think he can fill many roles for Canada. And I say the same thing about Mark Scheifele. So Mark Scheifele is a guy that in and out of the lineup, I think he'd be okay with that. He can play lower in the lineup. I think he's okay with that. He's a guy that, again, can play multiple roles for that team. And that's why I don't know when we talk about those three specifically, if Seth Jarvis can be the guy that can jump over those two. If I'm picking this team, I think you're right. I think it goes Hyman, Scheifele, and then I think Jarvis is third, because I do believe you need to have that mix of players. And not that Jarvis is one-dimensional, but those other two players bring more and they have the ability to defend better. And I think that you're going to need forwards that can do multiple roles to be able to be successful in this tournament.
Let's kick things in over to the NHL now and some of the results we saw last night, some of the results we've seen over the last week. We're getting to the point here, like by the end of this week, most teams in the NHL are going to have fewer than 30 games remaining on their
Wow.
schedule, or right around 30 games. Like, it's crazy. The season's flying by. And remember, we're about to have 3.5 weeks with no games at all. So again, that condensed schedule, it's going to get late early for some clubs. And you look out East, Petey, you texted me yesterday, 5 teams in the Eastern Conference that were playoff teams last year are currently on the outside looking in. You have Toronto, Washington, New Jersey, Florida, and Ottawa. I feel like Ottawa maybe doesn't quite belong in this conversation because they're recognized as a little bit of a mess, although they won last night. But if you had to pick one of those 5, Toronto's the closest. If they win their game in hand against Boston, they'll tie them in the standings. Is there one of these teams that missed last year and is on the outside right now that you think is sort of most likely to kick things into high gear in the final third of the season, we'll call it?
This is tough. This is a tough tie because when we looked at these teams early, kind of like we did with Edmonton, oh, they'll be there. Edmonton will be there. They'll be there. And you know what? Edmonton is. We said the same thing about Toronto. We said the same thing about Florida. Oh, they'll be there. They'll be fine. They'll be in a playoff spot. You know, the Olympics are coming. Well, it's getting tight. And I know Kachuk is back in Florida. Can he move the needle enough to get that team a boost? Yeah, I think he can. I think he's a guy that can help push them to play more Florida Panther hockey. I think the Devils have some turmoil right now. I think they're going to have some difficulties at the trade deadline. You see what's going on with Dougie Hamilton and all that disruption between the coach and the players. I don't think Jersey's going to be there. Washington needs to make an acquisition at the trade deadline. I think they need to get more scoring. I think they need to get a little bit faster. I think last year they overshot their skis and they were a little better than I thought they were. I think Toronto Maple Leafs are in. I think when you look at all of these 5 teams that have to get there, Toronto Maple Leafs have a really good roster when everybody's healthy. You need to get stronger goaltending and you got to get that timely scoring. But I think of those teams, Toronto is first and Florida is second in getting into the playoffs in the Eastern Conference.
I think I'd agree with that, and I'd add Washington, like you just talked about. They need to make an acquisition. They're the team that can change my perception of them the most at the trade deadline. They have a little bit of wiggle internally about the future of Alex Ovechkin. Ooh. Oh, sorry about that. You lost me there for a second. Anyways, internally, what do the Caps know about Alexander Ovechkin in his future? Because, like, if they think this is his last year, one, are you incentivized to maybe go a little bit harder at the deadline to get one more playoff push with Ovi? And two, do you maybe target a bigger name with term, knowing that, again, you're going to have to turn over this roster a little bit heading into the summer?
Yeah, this is difficult for this Washington team. And it's funny because a year ago I said that this is a team that's going to start going backwards. They're getting older. And then all of a sudden, Alexei Protas becomes a player. And I think that really turns your perspective on what the Capitals were becoming. I thought they were aging out and they were starting to fall. And partially because of Ovechkin. The roster is built for Ovechkin. They wanted to get him goals last season. They wanted him to break the record. And sometimes they got off the tangent of, hey, let's produce goals for 8 instead of trying to make the playoffs. And yet they found themselves in the playoffs. Yeah, this is a different roster without Ovechkin. And I don't know how you plan for that because so much is geared to trying to get him points. But you're right. A guy with term that is going to make a shock. Teleonsis is not afraid to throw some money around for a big name. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them in the hunt for anybody and everybody at the trade deadline.
So let's go surprising teams in the East that are out. How about surprising teams in the West that are actually in on the playoff picture? So we'll touch on this, then we'll get to our guests. But Anaheim moves into 3rd place in the Pacific. They've won 4 in a row. There was a time there, kind of almost a full month stretch where they were not looking good at all, but maybe they've got it back on track. San Jose is still holding on to a playoff spot or tied with the LA Kings for the final playoff spot. Utah, they seem to have sorted things out. They've won 3 in a row, points in 8 of their last 10. If you look at San Jose, Utah, and Anaheim, which one, I guess, PD, are you most confident in that can hold on to their playoff spot? So a bit of a reverse of the question out East.
Yeah, it's funny because these are teams that you said, oh, they might be scratching for a playoffs. They might be around it. I think it's a little early for San Jose, but you talked about the injury to Carlson and how that affects the Olympics. Well, that's going to affect the Ducks too. And when I look at these 3 teams specifically, outstanding young forwards can add a lot of offense on their team, but you got to look at how they defend. And for me, the big benchmark is goal differential. Anaheim is -12. San Jose is -20. Utah's +18. And I think Utah's got some things that those other teams don't. And when you look at their back end, they've got experienced defenders on the back end led by Sergachev. But Vejmelka has given up 2 or less in 6 of his last 8 starts. And I do think it starts there in their ability to stop the puck and defend in their own end. I think San Jose and Anaheim, if they could have, you never know, puck luck, they might be able to get there. But right now, I've got Utah. I do think Anaheim and San Jose are going to start to fall. And part of the reason is at the trade deadline, I don't see San Jose or Anaheim really going all in to add pieces, knowing they're not quite there yet. And trying to fight like that to face Colorado and give up assets just doesn't make sense to me. So I've got the Utah Mammoth getting into the playoffs for the first time in franchise history.
A weird little quirk in the Pacific Division. There are only 2 Pacific Division teams who have won more games than they've lost, and it's Anaheim and San Jose. The loser points are fascinating. Vegas has won exactly as many games as they've lost, 24 and 24, thanks to 12 loser points. Edmonton, 25 and 26. They have 8 loser points. And LA is the kings of the loser points. It's 20 and 29 straight up, 13 loser points. I do think it's interesting. Anaheim and San Jose are the 2 that have found a way to win more games than they've lost this year. But again, the loser point, that also is a reason why you might believe in a team like Anaheim and San Jose keeping their spot, because it's so hard for the teams below them to gain ground, Petey.
Yeah, and I think what we talked about before, I think there are, you look at the teams like Vegas and Edmonton. Vegas is going to do something at the trade deadline. They are always going to do something. You saw them add Rasmus Anderson, who I think makes that team better. Vegas and Edmonton are clearly the best teams in the Pacific Division, and I think they're going to start to separate themselves in this season after the Olympic break, as long as everybody can stay healthy.
Yeah, there's also a pretty sizable gap there from 8th to 7th, as the Vancouver Canucks have absolutely bottomed out. And that's how I tie into our guest, Irf Gaffar, is brought to you by Uber Eats, enabling fans to maximize their fandom all season long with exclusive game day deals on the app. From game day eats to paper plates and napkins, if you're hosting, to all the ingredients you need to make your go-to game day dip before, during, and after the game, Uber Eats is assisting every fan's hockey experience all season long. Irf Gaffar from Rink-Wide Vancouver in the DFO Rundown Insider Edition. New episode of that dropping later on today on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. Irf, our Uber Eats stat of the day. There is one team in the NHL currently below the 40-point mark, and it is the Vancouver Canucks. I'll start you with just sort of a general one. Are you surprised at how hard they've bottomed out here over the last month?
I don't know if surprised is the right word. Looking at this season and in the summer going into this season, you knew this roster was flawed and they needed everything to go completely right in order to be competitive. It has not gone right at all. They've had injuries to their goaltender. They have had star players not showing up. And then in the last little while, it's been the compete level of the team being called out by the head coach and, different players in the room and this, that, and the other. So where they're at right now is probably where they should be. But it's I still don't think this is as bad as it can get for this team. I think it can get worse, and they're already the worst team statistically in franchise history for the Vancouver Canucks, but they show no signs of even those little 1% improvements each and every game.
One of the questions I have, Irf, is you look at this team 2 seasons removed from 109 points and looking optimistic, and Pettersson's the future, and Thatcher Demko can stop the puck. Well, Demko can't stay healthy, and Pettersson has become a little bit of a conundrum here. What is the fan base thinking right now? This is one of the most difficult fan bases in all of hockey. How are they feeling about going from 109 points to where they are today?
Well, let me start with that 109-point team. There was a lot made about Kiefer Sherwood and his play and how he was such a hot topic and this, that, and the other. Kiefer Sherwood wasn't even on that team. He was on the Nashville team that the Canucks beat in the playoffs before losing to the Edmonton Oilers. So there's that aspect of it. But let me start with Thatcher Demko. Just frustrating. By the way, his new contract kicks in this summer with protection. That's a 3-year extension for Thatcher Demko. Look, I think it's being reported out there. It's been put out there. I'm wondering if surgery is needed for this guy. If there's something that needs to be done, go get it done if you're him. I mean, you have all the time in the world now to heal before training camp, so you hope you can see the best for that guy. And Elias Pettersson, I mean, the guy has come on of late. He's shown signs of being that player, but it's remarkable to see how far a player has gone since he signed his contract, really. Disappeared in the playoffs, was a non-factor last season, has had some injuries. Obviously, he's had some off-the-ice things that have gone on in his life as well. But, just things haven't gone well for him. And that is the reason why you hear his name being talked about a little bit. Would he be willing to waive? Is there a team that be interested in taking on that 11.6 cap hit? I don't think so. I think the Canucks would have to retain on that a little bit. Not entirely sure that they want to. But the fan base itself here in Vancouver, look, I grew up here. I was born and raised in this city. Never seen a team hoist the Stanley Cup. Got close in 2011. Got close in 94. And they want Gavin McKenna. They want that top pick. They want one of those few picks, top 3 picks. And I think that they understand where you have to go to get to being at that level. And it all starts with this draft. But my question is, to you guys, even when you look at it from an outsider standpoint, you look at the veterans on this team. You talk about cores being assembled in groups. The Oilers with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. You look at the Leafs with Austin Matthews and William Nylander. On this Vancouver Canucks team, you get Gavin McKenna 1 overall. Who are the veterans that you are insulating him with? That's my question.
Well, and that's the thing that got, speaking of Edmonton, that's what got them in trouble in their decade-long rebuild is they kept going, okay, Taylor Hall, okay, all these young guys, even going back, Sam Gagner, and they just couldn't get the proper veterans, and then they stunk because the kids had to play over their head, and then it ruined development, and it was this whole cycle, and that's what Vancouver needs to be afraid of doing here. On the other side of it, it seems like there's an appetite to rip this thing down to the studs a little bit. Like Elias Pettersson, you talk about the season a couple of years ago. Yeah, he was over a point per game player. He's nothing like that right now, and his name is popping up a little bit. What do you make of Pettersson's name potentially being out there? And I guess another question, what do you think the Canucks get for this guy? Is it just offloading him for the sake of offloading him? Are they looking for a return? Like, what's their goal here?
Well, it's funny because when you talk about players on the Canuck roster, there was a time where we talked about untouchables on this Vancouver Canuck team, and the only untouchable was Quinn Hughes. And look what happened. He said, "I want out. I'm out." And right now, with the way things are going for this team, if you're Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin, if you're even ownership and Francesco Aquilini looking at this saying, if the only way to do this is tear it down right to the bolts, then everything is on the table. Every single thing. So for Elias Pettersson, the interesting one is the cap hit. It's 11.6 for the next forever. And that's a guy where you don't really know what you're going to get. He was a point-a-game player, was unbelievable in his rookie year and the year after. He's a 102-point guy in this National Hockey League. But is he a number one center? Is he a center where a team is going to look at and say, okay, we're willing to give up X, Y, and Z, and then take on this contract in hopes a change of scenery can help this guy get back to that 102-point player? I'm not entirely sure how many teams are really, really interested in looking at that unless there's some salary retained. And I think that that's the important thing here that we should all remember in this. Look, the Vancouver Canucks probably don't want to do that. If you're looking to offload that contract, by all means, if you're a team that's going to take it, Vancouver Canucks, you just go ahead and do that. But I think that there's definitely changes that need to be made, and hearing his name isn't surprising at all.
Yeah, but it's frustrating for me to look at this roster and go, okay, to your point, you've got 4 draft picks this summer in the first 2 rounds right now, and that's without selling anybody. That number could increase. You look at some younger players. Marco Rossi's hurt. I think Teddy Bluger helps his team if he's healthy. But even if you do this, you clean house and you start drafting. You're Utah, San Jose, and Anaheim 5 or 6 years ago. And now we're finally talking about the playoffs. Again, we said New York Rangers are going through a retool. Can the Vancouver Canucks and their fan base really, really, really go through a down to the studs rebuild? Is it something they're really ready for? This is 6 years in the future we're talking about.
Absolutely. And I think you're going to have to be, right? If you just traded the team's best defenseman ever, arguably one of the team's best players ever, because he didn't want to be here. He didn't want to be a part of what was going on. And that's on management, because management didn't give him the tools that he thought that they needed to get better and get to that point where they can be a playoff team, where they can be a cup contender, where they can be a team that people look at and are feared in the Western Conference and the Pacific Division. They just are so far away from that right now. They're a team that is scratching and clawing, like you just mentioned, to try and get to maybe 60 points this season. Like, it's unbelievable the way that things have kind of gone sideways for this team. And I think that the fan base here does realize that. Like, it is going to need to get a lot worse before it gets better. Collect the draft picks. Try and get rid of these contracts. Some of these guys, Brock Besser has won 2 goals in the last forever. You look at Jake DeBrusk, a guy that only scores on the power play this season. You look at a guy like Evander Kane, who obviously hasn't done well. And you look at a guy like Connor Garland, heart and soul guy, but he is not that guy that's going to take you into the fight every single day and win you hockey games. And that's really rounding out your top 6, aside from what you just mentioned in Marco Rossi, who's injured. And he's young, so can you really pin it on this guy? So it's Elias Pettersson. It is some of these guys with that protection. And that's why this Philip Roenick thing is interesting to me. Because you look at a player like Philip Roenick, they could probably get a haul for this guy, an absolute haul. he's on a good contract. He's got some protection. He's playing some of the best hockey of his life right now. So when you look at it from the Canucks point of view, I understand that he has trade protection. He probably wants to stay in Vancouver. But if you're in the business of stripping it down and being bad and trying to get assets to improve your hockey team in 4 or 5 years, including Gavin McKenna or, Ivar Stenberg or Keaton Vierhoff, whoever it may be, I think that that's what you're going to have to do. Like there's a situation where you're going to have to get really bad and strip this thing right down before it gets better.
Last one, Irf, is if they are going to rip this down and then try to build it back up, is this management group the right group to do it? Will they be the group that gets to do it? Or how much of this failure do you think lies at their feet?
I think a lot of it does. Jeff, our co-host of Rinkwide Vancouver, had a lot of great things to say about the accountability and the lack thereof from this managing group of what's kind of gone on over the last little while. And you don't really hear any of it. And, it starts with ownership, obviously, and Francesco Aquilini. Then it goes down to Jim Rutherford. And do we trust Jim Rutherford to go and make moves to improve hockey teams or to try and strip this thing down? I mean, I for a guy that's been around as long as he has, I'm in maybe the majority that says that, okay, he kind of gets a little bit of benefit of the doubt here where he can go and make some of these moves. I mean, you look at what he got back for Kiefer Sherwood when there were an injured hockey player where there was no chance that they were going to get a first round pick. You still got something for the guy, which those 2 picks could end up being top 50. So that's a pretty good return for a guy like Kiefer Sherwood, not to mention the prospect. But beyond that, you look at some of the moves that have been made in the past. When they were playing well, okay, Elias Lindholm, and then you look at Nikita Zadorov. Those are good moves. And then some of the other moves, okay, the contracts that were handed out and the no movement clauses, you can probably ding them on that a little bit. And then the lack of finding a second-line center, a true second-line center over the last little while, you look at them on that. But I think that Rutherford does stick it out. My question is, does Patrick Allvin? I think that Jim Rutherford has a lot of respect in the National Hockey League. I think that 31 other GMs, when Rutherford calls, picks up the phone really quickly. And I don't know if I can say the same about Patrick Allvin. And just when you look at it from that aspect of it, just because of the reputation that Rutherford has. So the future of Patrick Allvin would be in question. But when things are going so bad, guys, I mean, as well as it is around the National Hockey League, if you're a team that bottoms out and as bad as the Vancouver Canucks are, everything is on the table at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I think a lot of things are on the table heading into the trade deadline. Irf Gaffar from the DFO Rundown Insider Edition with Dave Pagnotta every Wednesday on the Daily Faceoff YouTube and Rinkwide Vancouver as well. Irf, thanks for popping on. This was great.
All right, gentlemen, be well.
Yeah, it's not good. Let's get to our daily face-off inbox question. Hashtag askdfo. J-Rock said, who would even take EP41? And listen, the rumblings have been out there for a little bit, and I think there are some fan bases who are intrigued at the possibility of taking on Elias Pettersson. I know someone said New York. I don't think he could survive the New York market. Detroit, I think, is interesting, but I don't know if he's the right fit there. The one team that I think is interesting, Petey, I think the San Jose Sharks are actually an interesting fit. You have $50+ million in cap space for next season. You could slot him in behind Macklin Celebrini, say, hey, the pressure's off. You're not the face of the franchise anymore. You're our good defensive second-line center. We need you to score 70 points a year. You put him on that power play. Like, that is, and honestly, I think that's the only team I look at and go, that's a good natural fit for him.
Yeah, it's frustrating when you look at a player like this that's making that kind of money for this kind of term that was expected to be leading this franchise. And you look around the leagues at the teams that are at the top of their game right now. You look at Florida, Colorado, Tampa, Vegas. I don't know if this is a guy you want to throw into your locker room. Is he a guy that's going to play Florida Panther hockey? I'm not so sure. So you're right. I think this is a fit where, hey, let's face it. Vancouver is as tough a hockey market as there is in the National Hockey League. San Jose? It's not. So if you want to hide somewhere, you can hide down there in the valley easy. So yeah, I think his skill level is there. I think he can play a certain way of a certain style of hockey. I think he still can distribute the puck. I still think he's got the offensive upside. But to your point, he hasn't been able to carry a team right now, and I don't think he has to in San Jose. And I think San Jose's style of play might fit with him and a little less pressure in the room. Maybe it's a place where he could finally get back to the player that they were hoping to have 3 years ago, and maybe he can become that. Because you're right, I don't think he can go to the New York market. good grief, no. In the way they want to play under Mike Sullivan, I just don't think he fits. So this will be interesting to see if they can get rid of him and what kind of a market is he going to bring back.
All right, let's keep moving along. Get to our daily bets for Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Patty Puff and X next to your name. Are you worried that it's a post-vacation hangover for you, Pat?
Not really. Watching that game last night, I think I had my opportunities. Hyman had like maybe 2 or 3 right net front opportunities and a post that he probably should have scored on. So it was right there. I mean, he's one of the hottest goal scorers in the league right now. So it was worth the bet. But I think the one I got tonight is better. So I'm excited.
All right, I'll kick things off for us, Pat. Obviously, no Huts today for the betting challenge. I will go 2 puck lines that I like this evening. Washington on the puck line over Vancouver for all the reasons Irf Gaffar just talked about. It is an absolute mess in Vancouver, so I don't mind taking minus a goal and a half. Even though the Canucks kept it close earlier in the week against the Islanders, I don't think they'll do that against Washington. Washington's lost 3 in a row as well, so get right spot for them is what I'm saying. And Utah's hot. They're taking on a Philly team that's in the middle of a road trip. That can always be tough for teams. Philly played the Golden Knights really, really well earlier in the trip, but again, these Western trips are hard for these East Coast teams. So I don't mind 2 puck lines, and it's a juicy plus 537. Pat, what do you got?
Well, I'm trying something new today. This is my goal differential parlay. I've got Washington money line versus Vancouver, Pittsburgh money line versus Calgary, Islanders money line versus Seattle for plus 456. And again, the reason I picked these 3 teams is because they all have positive goal differentials against teams that have negative goal differentials. I could have also thrown the Avs in there and the Utah Mammoth in there, but I didn't feel really good about the Flyers-Utah game. That one's kind of 50-50 for me, and the Avs don't really add any juice. So I did on my personal account, I put those in, but for this, we'll keep it at plus 456. I figured that was enough juice for me today.
The Avs are minus 310 tonight against the Ducks. That is an absolutely insane line. But the Ducks, of course, without Leo Carlsson. Wrapping up the show with a little bit of garbage time. I thought this was an interesting sort of behind-the-scenes look that the Oilers gave us from one of their mic'd up segments of Connor McDavid talking with a linesman. So I'm going to play it, and then, Petey, I'm going to ask you a question. But, Pat, roll the tape first.
What do we do to work better on faceoffs together?
You and I think we're okay. I haven't yelled at you at all.
No, I know, but like I was just talking to Leon, like right there, I'm eating a lot of because technically that's, as you know, apparently I've talked to you about this. I don't want to call it. That's the last thing I want to do. So, but it works like every time I feel like it's just like I talk to Leon and we're bang right across again. So I just want to know, like, is there something I can do to try to work with you guys better? Because the last thing I want to do is kick.
I think it's inevitable. It's going to be a little bit hot always, but I think you're doing a great job. We started off on the wrong foot, but I think we're good now. No, we've taken enough big draws together that I think we're all right.
Yeah, but I just want to make sure that we got an open line.
Yeah.
That's all.
Appreciate
that make sense? Okay.
So I like this clip because it shows us a little bit about the relationship between even a linesman and a player and what they're talking about throughout the game. But the other part of it, I know you've been doing the Hockey 101 thing with the What Chaos guys and teaching some of the new fans some intricacies of the game. And there are some basics, I should say. Face-offs and what causes a player to get kicked out. I have been watching this sport my whole life, Petey. I have no fucking idea what's going on.
Ironically, Ty, guess what we're working on today on the What Chaos segment is why do you kicked out of faceoffs? And this, we actually have a Leon Draisaitl 4 or 5 clip. He cheats all the time. And one of the things that gets you to get kicked out of these faceoffs, your sticks need to be down in the white area. Before the puck is dropped, when the puck is dropped, you can go after this puck. Leon tries to cheat. And trust me, he's not the only player in the National Hockey League that's trying to cheat and win that faceoff and anticipate that puck drop. It's an important part of the game, but he's one of those players that does it more often than others. And when he's got 97 on the ice with him, you've got another guy that can step in there. But when you don't have 97 out there, yeah, it can put your team at a disadvantage. It is really hard to see. And when you watch it live to see which stick went first into that red area of the circle and try to decide who's getting kicked out is nearly impossible. And so what we're doing today is we're slowing it down frame by frame to show just how good the linesmen are in this league. One complaint I always had as a video guy to linesmen is some of them that wouldn't drop the puck quickly. Just they line up, get it, drop it. And the guys that take that extra time, those are the ones that are harder to read and harder to stay in for the entire faceoff. So when they have that discussion like that, it is, yeah, when we get our sticks on, drop it. Like, let's go. Like, let's not wait because that hesitation is what's going to cause guys to jump.
First off, people are going to think that you and I teed this all up on purpose. I had
no
no idea. You guys
absolutely not.
I didn't know you guys were doing that today on What Chaos. So that's unbelievable. But yeah, with Leon, you said something interesting there. I actually think he is a lot more aggressive and a lot of the times I'm interested to see what clips you pull up. It's when both Connor and Nuge are on the ice. So he's got a guy who can kind of win really well on both sides of the ice there. So I think Leon just gets, especially on the power play, uber aggressive and cheating because it's like, okay, either I get away with it and I win the draw, or Connor McDavid just takes it and he's pretty good himself.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And I do think that's part of what's interesting. And, it's hard for people that watch this game to understand what's happening. Faceoffs are crazy. And it's not just the center. It's the wingers got to get involved. And do they cross into the circle? There's so much going on. But if you're not being aggressive and you're not trying to cheat the game and you're not trying, Robin is racing, like you better try. And the best faceoff guys in this league are guys that are trying to anticipate it. And if you're going to play like that, you're going to get kicked out of the faceoff circle.
All right, that is a wrap on today's edition of the show. Petey, you were fantastic. As always, Irf Gaffar gave us some great insight into the mess that is the Vancouver Canucks and their season. Tomorrow, Hutz and I in studio from Nation Network headquarters. Wow. Johnny Lazarus should be by as well, so should be a very, very fun day. Then we're off to Jasper to be doing shows from there over the weekend, so should be exciting. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube, do so right now because you won't want to miss it. Enjoy your Wednesday, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow at noon Eastern. Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.